Let's move on now to the Washington Commanders free agency review. But before we do that, Ryan and I just want to let you know this is our last series of the free agency section of the 2023 offseason before we transition to previewing the 2023 season. And that means a lot more Washington content. So if you want to see that as soon as you get on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and ring that bell to get notified when new content gets released. Ryan, with that being said, let's get into it. The Commanders were just short of the playoffs this past season, and they kind of decided to just go in a different direction for sure. And by that, I mean, like, Taylor Heineke became a fan favorite all throughout the football world. Carson Wentz obviously was not a fan favorite, and so he is gone. And so they're kind of doing I feel like saying pseudo rebuild's wrong because they actually have a good team all around it. I guess really it's just around the quarterback. They decided not to draft a quarterback, which I totally get. And at the same time, they're going to kind of – I think it's a low risk, high reward either way. If Sam Howell is your guy, then they brought in Jacoby Brissett in the free agency market. If Sam Howell is the guy and he plays well, and he might not make the playoffs, but you see improvement, okay, he's your guy. And if he syncs it up, then boom, you got a top 5 next year.
Exactly. I think that's the exact conversation you have with him. You bring him in and you're like, Sam, this season is totally up to you, right?
Yeah.
If you come in and you play well, you're our guy. If we're in position to draft one of these top QB prospects, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, right? Yeah. If we're in one of these positions to draft one of the top QB prospects, you didn't do your job, essentially. And
exactly.
You're dead to us. So no, but and I bring that up specifically for Washington because they did everything that we said that they needed to do in this offseason. They needed to bolster up the offensive line. They needed to address the secondary. We didn't really like the secondary picks in the draft, so to say, and that's completely our opinion. And we will absolutely admit when they both are interception leaders or like top cornerback or safety. But that being said, though, to give them credit, they addressed the secondary with the first 2 picks in the draft. They addressed the offensive line with the 3rd and 4th pick in the draft. They also addressed the offensive line in free agency by getting Nick Gates, center from the Giants, and Andrew Wiley, the right tackle from the Chiefs. And then as well, they also brought in sub-secondary help as well, Cameron Dantzler from the Vikings. So it's like those were honestly the main needs for the team. Skill position player-wise, they're kind of set with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson as well in the backfield. And then also their front 7. I mean, we don't need to talk too much about the front 7. I mean, we know how good they are. So it's like it's this team has potential, but it's just can the leaders kind of take them to that next level?
No, yeah, definitely. And let's just get into their roster breakdown. I know we just said a lot of names there, so let's actually get into some visuals here. But starting off at the top of this with the wide receiver room, so Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson they're very similar players, but I think them together is a really nice duo. Diami Brown was a 3rd-round pick a couple years ago. But outside of those guys, they don't have a whole lot. Oh, and then Curtis Samuel in the slot, which that's a good one. So they brought in a bunch of undrafted free agents here. And so that'll be interesting to kind of see how that wide receiver room shakes out. They have 2 really good guys at the top. And then you already mentioned the additions to the offensive line. And I think this should be a much improved group. It'll be really interesting to see how they fare in this division with the Eagles and the Cowboys specifically in the pass rushes that they bring to the table. I think that's going to be a really interesting battle. Yeah. And then one of the probably, in my opinion, the weakest position on their depth chart is going to be that tight end position. Logan Thomas, John Bates, Armani Rogers, just not a super dynamic group. I think they get the job done, but barely, right? And so,
well, and that's where it's like, so we're now in this era of like these elite tight end, these elite receiver-esque tight ends. They're just really big boys that can just run up the middle. Travis Kelce, Gronk is absolutely in there. Throw in Mark Andrews. Now you have then Kyle Pitts that's kind of leading in. We're going to have Brock Bowers next year, which they're technically tight ends, but they're really just really big, slow receivers. But Logan Thomas, though, kind of fits that traditional mold. He is getting older, so it's one of the issues, but he kind of fits that mold of what a lot of teams are just needing in a tight end nowadays. It's just a guy that can come in and block. He can maybe get you 400, 500 yards. He is still good. He still has a lot of potential, but he is just getting up there in age. So he's been a little injury riddled. That's one area I would have thought that they maybe would have addressed at some point in the draft. But also, that being said, their first 4 picks, as that's what we talked about in the beginning, address their specific immediate need. Getting a top tier tight end normally isn't like a make or break for a team, but having a horrible secondary or a horrible offensive line is.
Yeah, exactly. And then filling out the rest of their offensive depth chart, QB, that's going to be a really interesting story to watch develop this season with Sam Howell. And then running back, actually a really crowded running back room, right? Mm-hmm. So they drafted Brian Robinson last year, and then they have Antonio Gibson, whose rookie deal I think is up at the end of this season. And then Chris Rodriguez as well, who they drafted this year. So I think that's going to be a really interesting group to watch. I think we could see all 3 of these guys get a decent amount of snaps.
Yeah, I could absolutely see it. I will say this: if they like what they see with Rodriguez, I would not be surprised if Gibson maybe gets dropped to clear up some
the only thing. So I feel like Gibson, Robinson, and Rodriguez in that order progressively get bigger, right? And they progressively have less receiving skills. And I think Antonio Gibson, I think they might just ride out his contract and then just let him walk and find receiving back in the 2024 draft, because right now they don't have a solid receiver out of the backfield besides him. So I think that'll be an interesting thing to watch. But I like that trio that they have, and you can get those backs every year that can come in and make a difference on third down. So I think that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
But let's move on now to their defense. And we already said this. We weren't a huge fan of their first 2 picks. Not necessarily we don't like the players, just the players on the board we felt would have fallen in a different order, right? And so I'll be interested to see how the secondary works with these 2 new guys. But man, do they have a huge benefit in going to an organization that has a pass rush like this. Because I'm just
cracking up. The first 5 names, I'll have a 1 next to them, and like they're all
they're
really good. Chase Young arguably might be the worst, and that's just because I think he's still recovering from that ACL that he suffered. Was it from the end of 2021? Is that when it was? He didn't really play too much last year. Yeah, so it's like that's just an unfortunate situation. But you just go and look at those guys, and it's just
but that's what I was about to say is like. You look at what they were able to do last year. I'm pretty sure they had a top 10 pass rush in the NFL, and they didn't even have their number 1 overall pick pass rusher helping out. And so that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch for this team. And this defense has me excited. I mean, if Sam Howell can come in and play well, even if they do – I think similar to like what the Titans used to do, where like they would just play grinded out football, right, and win these games 20-17 with a solid pass rush and an opportunistic secondary. Which, to be fair, the guys that they did draft were pretty opportunistic. Emmanuel Forbes has the most career interceptions in SEC history. So, I think if they can come in and do that, I think that's going to be a pretty scary defense.
Yeah, no, and I agree, and that kind of to me leads into like our final segment. This like I guess kind of what is a successful season, and to me, I think it's just that it's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs just because of the 3 other teams in their division. I think are better than them, and so yes, there is a possibility they could be that 7th seed. Maybe they could be a 6th seed, but it's hard they have to play against those teams 6 times. Yeah. And I don't see them having a winning record against them. Their schedule is a little bit easier overall since they were last year. And so obviously playoffs a good goal. I'd definitely consider that a successful year, but it's hard to make this tangible, but just showing consistent progress. Like if Sam Howell turns into your Taylor Heineke, I think that's a successful year. If you hit on your the secondary, and you see improvement there. They're average. They're just average compared to what they were last year.
Yeah,
I think that's an improvement. And then on top of that, if your offensive line isn't in the bottom tier, but it then becomes average, just seeing those improvements being like these prospects that you're drafting make the team better, then that is a successful year. And it's funny, then saying that, though, then that makes making the playoffs more likely.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in an NFC where I don't want to say is weak, but you're going to have an opportunity to make one of those wild card spots. I think they're pretty much on par with the Giants, who were a wild card team last year and then actually won a playoff game against Minnesota. And so, I mean, I would say a successful season would be making a playoff berth, but more, in my opinion, more importantly for the long-term future of this organization, I think a successful season, you get your answer at quarterback, right? Is Sam Howell the guy or not? And if he's not, you're most likely in position to either draft or trade up and draft one of the top quarterback prospects next year. And then can this defense be as elite as it is on paper, right? You have six or seven first-round picks on it. Six. Yeah. And then you just drafted Jartavius Martin in the second as well. And so can that translate onto the stat sheet and have this defense be really good? So I think there's a couple things that are going to be good markers for success for this Commanders team. And yeah, I'm looking forward to watching them. I said it a lot, but I think this team is really interesting going into 2023.
Yeah, no, it's the AFC is going to be fun to watch just because there's so many loaded teams. And then the NFC, there's a lot of teams that are projects that have potential to make the playoffs, and the Commanders are one of them. And it's going to be fun to kind of see who is the correct piece that you're going to see with the team for long term, or who's not going to make it. And that goes the same also with a lot of these other teams in the NFC.
Yeah, no, definitely. So let's go ahead and wrap up the Commanders offseason recap there. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe and leave a comment down below on what your favorite Commanders offseason edition was. Was it a draftee? Was it a free agent signing? Let us know down below. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.